Hello and welcome to another episode of People of Media. And today I get to interview my friend Jan Freitag. Jan is the National Director of the Hospitality and Analytics Group at CoStar Group. And he has actually been an influential person, know it or not. There was something he said to me probably 12 years that was defining for me. So Jan, welcome to the show.
Well, what a setup. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I hope you can live up to the hype. Yeah, he changed my life. He changed my entire life.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, Jan, can you tell us a little bit about your origin story?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I am from Germany, as you might be able to tell by the name, or the last name is actually means Friday in German.
Yeah.
I'm a hotel guy, so it's out of the gate. My title is National Director Hospitality Analytics, and we'll talk about that. But I'm a hotel guy. I watched if you remember, Love Boat. In Germany, it was called Green Boat, but there was the people who worked on that ship. Just when I saw that when I was younger in high school, I was like, that is the coolest job in the world. So I tried to understand how can you work on a cruise ship, and they said, well, you should do an apprenticeship. So I did an apprenticeship in a hotel in Germany, and from there I realized I don't want to work on a cruise ship. I want to be a GM. So I ended up at the hotel school at Cornell, where they're like, well, you could do operations, or there's this whole other thing about real estate, finance, data. And I was like, oh, interesting. So I did that for a year consulting with Ernst & Young, which wasn't that interesting. And then a friend of mine started a data company in Ithaca, New York, out of all places, to compete with the premier hotel data provider, which at the time was in Hendersonville, Tennessee. And he said, you should join me. And I said, I'm not a startup guy. I really shouldn't. But my girlfriend at the time was like, we totally should. So we moved from Phoenix, Arizona to Ithaca and helped him start this company. Then 9/11 happened, and we got a call from Randy Smith, the founder of STR, Smith Travel Research, which was that premier provider of hotel data that we're trying to compete with. And he said, look, you have really good ideas and no clients. And I have all the clients and I need some new ideas. So let me take you over and you have to move to Nashville. And I literally was like, where is that? So I like opened up a roadmap basically to see where Nashville, Tennessee was. And I've been here for 23 years, so this happened in beginning of 2002. And I was with this company, STR. I was like employee number 40 or so. And we were right at this sweet spot of data getting more important, computing power getting a lot cheaper, and people wanting to participate in the program so that they could get data out. It was a give to get system we'll talk about. Um,
Ah,
and then, and I've been there since 2002, and I had various roles and ideas and stuff. But I ended up being one of the friendly faces of the company. So I was flying around the country and the world to speak about hotel data, which turns out is a topic that people like to hear, not for a long time, but they do like to hear it. So we get asked to sort of keynote large industry events or ownership events or brand events only for 20 minutes. But people say, look, this is kind of important to set the stage because we have access to all this data, which we'll talk about. So I've been doing that, for a long, long time. In 2019, CoStar, which is a publicly traded NASDAQ 100 entity, $36 billion market cap, bought STR and sort of rolled us into their commercial real estate data empire. So CoStar owns homes.com, apartments.com, land.com. I think they own like 30 companies or something. And they know a lot about what is the average office utilization in that office tower. Who owns that mall? What did that restaurant trade for? What is the average rent in an apartment building, in a multifamily building? And so hotel data sort of slotted very, very nicely in that. And then they came to me and said, look, it looks like you're talking all the time about this data. Can you come over to the CoStar side and talk to more of the CoStar clients, the brokers, the lenders, the finance people? And that was 2019. So that's the role that I have today. So I never became a general manager, but I talk to general managers all the time. And every once in a while I meet somebody who was like, oh man, that could be me. That would have
Oh
been me. But it's
man.
not. I'm the data guy.
Can you even picture what your life would be like if you had gone that other more traditional route?
Absolutely, I can. 100%. I was in Spain 2 weeks ago at a luxury hotelier get together where a bunch of Italian, French, American, APAC general managers of five-star independent hotels got together. And when I see these guys in their $1,000 suits and their $600 ties, and they all look perfect, and they talk about service delivery on the very highest level, charging incredible amounts of money to people who have incredible amount of money. So when I talk to these guys, I'm like, yeah, that would have been me. But it's
Wow. Yeah.
not.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then what would you say? Because there's the story here is, you took a risk, right? That was an unconventional risk, and it's probably a risk that you wouldn't have taken, but the girlfriend had some influence and said, let's live a little wild, right? And so you did that. What would you say is the kind of the superpower or the gift or the ability that is in you that you get to leverage or that you've got to leverage all along in your professional journey? The
um,
superpower.
couple of things. So number one, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a company man. I'm not a great first guy. I'm a great second guy. Like
Yeah.
you want me on your team. When you have visions and dreams and wouldn't it be this and that and the other, you still need somebody to do it. And I'm that guy. I don't. The scariest thing for me is a blank piece of paper. I don't get it.
Yeah.
It's not for me. Give me a box, and I can color in that box really well. Which
Yeah.
is, and the guy who started this entity in Ithaca, New York, was exactly the opposite. Like he was
Yeah.
that dreamer, could
Yeah.
could could dream, could make up things in his mind, and I'm just like, I don't get it. But if you say this is going to work, I'm here to help. And
Yeah.
so it worked out really, really well together.
Yeah.
It's he was giving me a very, very high compliment the other day. He now has since obviously also moved on and works in large corporations, with large teams. And he said, what I tell my team is everybody needs a Jan.
Yeah.
And what that means is basically is that when we got close to finishing the product or the deliverable, I would just basically wrestle it from him and say, you're done now. Because he
Yeah.
would just tinker and change and then come back, and the programmers would be like, dude, that's not at all where we were going.
Yeah.
So the ability to follow directions, but also then to sort of wrangle the dreamer, I think is one. And the
Yeah.
other superpower, which is super random, but I sort of fell into this, is I can talk about data for 20 minutes in a way that you will say, huh, that didn't suck. Like it wasn't boring.
Yes.
Like it's not how I would choose much to spend my time, but this guy made it at least mildly interesting. And
Yes.
that is, it's a low bar.
Yeah.
We've all been through data presentations where you're just like, whoa, this was a lot. And I'm not really sure where he was going. And I somehow am able to translate our data into what I like to say into English,
Yeah.
into nomenclature that people understand.
And I would even add to that probably story. Like you obviously are passionate about this stuff, right? Like you're willing to jump on an interview with me and talk for an hour about this. So you obviously care about it. And then I think there's a story piece to it because numbers are boring if there's not a story behind it or conclusions to draw from it. And so
Mhm.
how did you discover that you were able to take kind of all these disparate data points and turn them into a narrative or a story?
So the book, whatever it was, Peak or what, I forget the name of the book, where it said like you have to do something 10,000 hours.
Yeah, yeah, yes,
So I don't know that I've presented 10,000 hours, but I'm a
yeah,
firm believer in practicing and rehearsing. I rehearse my talks all the time, even though I do them all the time. but I still rehearse. So maybe I'm at 5,000 hours, what have you. But
Yeah.
I realized the more I talked, the less people actually cared about the data. Like I have charts, and there are lots of numbers on these charts,
Yeah.
but people were sort of distracted by figuring out, is it 17.2% or 17.8%?
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
more interesting for me to say, look, growth rates are rocking. This is an
Yeah.
amazing growth rate that we've never seen before. And forget the number. So the more I
Yeah.
present, the less I talk about numbers. Yes, of course, there are certain highlighting numbers that I have to use, but I normally just talk without using a number in my sentence.
Yeah. Right. And then people can
Correct.
see
It's
what to
behind me.
do with
And
that.
I'm happy to share the slides. I'm just like, look, I'm just giving you the narrative that then you can, when you have time, look at the slides and interpret them. It's like, oh, what did you say here? Okay, that's interesting.
So you know what I call that is the nugget. That there's always like the gold nugget, right? Like there's always a lot to be said, but I think it's a rare skill for a person to be able to find the nugget of what's important and what has punch and what has impact and what matters to the listener and give it to them, right? Here's the nugget. And I feel like that's what you did for me when we had that conversation all those years ago. I left that conversation and I was like, they've built an empire out of 3 data points. You said it just like that, and it is like magic. I like got it, right? um,
Yeah.
so maybe that's a good transition. If you can you tell us a little bit about the Hotel News Now business model and that adventure, that grand adventure, and how that all went.
Yeah. So STR, sorry, let me start at the very beginning. So Randy Smith started a company,
Yeah.
which he called Smith Travel Research. And
Yep.
we always joked, and he made the joke. He's like, look, this is a terrible name. A, it's way too long. But B, we don't do travel, we do hotel. And we don't do research, really. We do benchmarking, which is a little different. And
Mm-hmm.
we can talk about that if you want. So it went from Smith Travel Research to STR, then to CoStar. But while we were at STR, we got approached by an editor of one of the major industry publications. And he said, look, here's the truth. You guys write free content for me because you want the data out there. So every month we would write a monthly column, and it ended up, I would write a lot of them. And he would tell to the owner, I can sell the ad space that's opposite of your data page for more than the other pages in the magazine because I know people want to read that.
Yeah.
You are leaving money on the table. You should be doing a newsletter slash you should go out there and publish your own content that then you can sell advertising against. And help me set this up.
Yeah.
Let me help you set this up.
Yeah.
Allow me to
Yeah.
set this up. And so he started, which became Hotel News Now.
Ah,
This
okay. So that's what
newsletter
that was.
that is
Yep.
powered by the STR data, which still exists today. It's part of the CoStar News empire. And we still, I still write for them, and obviously they have, journalists all over the place, all over the world actually, and they, do a really really nice job synthesizing what's going on in the state of the hotel industry every day. Every day the newsletter comes out.
That's daily. That's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
The other part that this gentleman did, he was like, look, and the other thing you need is a conference. We're like, we don't want a conference. Like we're speaking at these conferences all the time, traveling there is a pain. And he's like, no, we're doing it in Nashville.
Yeah.
We use the STR staff to be the staff, so we don't have to hire anybody. And it became what's today known as the Hotel Data Conference. And it's now in its 12th year. No, is that right? No, sorry, sweet 16th year this year. And it sells out every year. It's in August for 2.5 days. We call it PowerPoint Palooza because it's literally PowerPoint. I mean, it's on the label, Hotel Data Conference. That's what you get.
Yeah.
If you're not into
Yeah.
hotel data, this is not for you. But it
Yeah.
sells out, 750 people, and has sold out for I think 10 years or so. And people who come really like it because
Yeah.
it's what they want. Their revenue managers, their general managers, they really want hotel data.
Yep.
deliver.
Okay. All right. Now going back to the core product, right? So the Hotel News Now was the newsletter. So now you're
Correct.
building audience with a newsletter.
Correct.
Conference, you're also building audience, and you're building
Correct.
notoriety and fame, and right. So brand visibility. The product is the data, actually,
Correct.
right? So
Yeah,
all these things are marketing and
absolutely. All to make the data more sticky for people to say, oh, I want more of that data.
yes.
So the data, the way the data works, and this is, I mean, it is genius. It is truly genius from Randy Smith, 1986 at his kitchen table with his
Yep.
wife, Carol.
Yep.
The idea is that you collect three numbers and you make three numbers. And that is it. So we're getting from each hotel
hmm
how many by day, how many rooms did you have available yesterday? How many rooms did you sell? And how much money did you make? So what we call supply, demand, and revenue. And that's it. And it's beautiful because how many rooms did you have available? That normally doesn't change very much.
hmm
How many rooms you sold, how much money you made does change. But the night auditor who runs the numbers every night at the front desk, he knows that. So
Yeah.
there are multiple people who know this. It's
Yeah.
always hard to try to access data that is sort of in a silo and only one person can get to it. And then
Yeah.
John goes on vacation for 3 weeks and everything breaks down, right? We're asking for data points that are pretty easily available. And
Yeah.
then we make out of it three numbers, the three numbers that sort of drive the industry. The first one is occupancy. In commercial real estate, people use vacancy, but occupancy is just the inverse. So how many rooms, what's the ratio of the rooms you sold, the occupancy percent. The second number is ADR, average daily rate. What's the average cost of a room? And then the last number, this doesn't exist anywhere in commercial real estate, but it is genius. It's the combination of ADR and occupancy. It's called RevPAR, revenue per available room. And if I ask you, you're running an 80% occupancy, I'm running a 60% occupancy, which hotel is better? The obvious counter question should be, well, what are you charging?
Yeah.
You have to, like, of course, you can sell rooms for $1 and you're running 100% occupancy, right? So the rate and the occupancy work together. And what Randy and other people right before him figured out is to combine those two into one number. Now you can compare hotels. You can say, what's your RevPAR versus what's my RevPAR? Okay, now we can actually compare each other. And the other piece that Randy allowed people to do is to pick what's called a competitive set. So you say, I'm the Jan in. Let me compare myself to these 4 or 6 or 10 hotels. And STR will give me the average performance of those 10 hotels. So I say
hmm
my occupancy is 70%, my comp set is 65%. Oh, I'm doing better.
Yeah.
And you get to RevPAR, to see if you're really doing better. But that competitive set piece was critical in the success because people said, oh, why would I participate with you?
Yeah.
We're like, you know what? We actually don't want your money.
Yeah.
You give us data
Yeah.
and we tell you how the market is doing for free.
Yeah.
And if you're really into data, you get that market report once or twice, and then you're saying, look, this compares me to all of Dallas. Dallas is pretty big.
Yeah.
Can I just get something that's a little bit more custom where I'm just like, maybe the submarket that I'm in, or like can I just pick 5 or 6 hotels? And we're like, now we want money.
Yes.
Oh, and we talked about this in a different call. The difference between interesting and actionable.
Yeah.
The difference between interesting is always free.
Yeah.
Actionable, you need to pay for. So I say, you give me data, I give you the market. That's interesting. Are you really going to change your pricing strategy? Do you really know how you're doing? If I tell you the Dallas occupancy is 62% and yours is 68%, you're like, huh, okay, that's a good first step, but I really need to dig deeper and
Yeah.
compare myself to the hotels in a mile around me.
Yeah.
Oh. Now you're making that step to the data being actionable because you're going to adjust your pricing based on that. And that's when you make money, we want to make money.
Yes.
That's the business model, and that's where the competitive set was so critical to our success because we
Yeah.
allowed people to step down one level, but we said, hey, you want a free solution? Here's a free solution. No money changes hands, nobody gets hurt. We do need your data, by the way, because
Yeah.
on the other side, we can monetize that, right?
Yes.
Because it
Yeah.
flows into all the other competitive sets, you know?
Yes.
So super brilliant on Randy Smith's part to allow people to get data for free and to allow them to get a paid solution that is just that much better, actionable.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was the genius. And then as more brands started around the world, like Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, Swiss Hotel, Shangri-La, a lot as Marriott grew, as Wyndham grew, as Choice Hotels grew, they're all like, oh, if you're signing up with us, you're part of the SGR
Yeah.
system. We didn't have to sell them. They
Yeah.
they just start sending us the data. It used to be night auditors. Obviously, these days it's all automated. We get the feeds, and
Yeah.
the data gets restated back in time and all that. There's a whole machine to it that I know nothing about other than that it happens, and that data comes out on. We get the data on Monday morning for the prior week, and then on Tuesday night we push the reports out.
Man, that's crazy. So the reports are automatic. This again, I'm feeling the same kind of awe that I felt when we talked all those years ago because it is genius, but it's also simple, not easy. I don't think anything that you said is easy, right? But there's a simplicity to it that just makes me it encourages me, it inspires me. The difference, even whatever's worth the price of admission here. Like if anybody retains one thing, the thing that I'm going to take away is that idea of interesting versus actionable,
Yeah.
right? Because if you don't have interesting, if you had done this business model and you didn't have free interesting, you never would have got to paid actionable, right?
I agree. And I think that's for the listeners out there, for your audience.
Yes.
They sit on something
Yeah.
that they can give away, where they're like, look, I have this thing, whatever it is, and I'm just going to put it out every month, every quarter, every week, whatever it is. And just like, it's here. It's
Yeah.
here. It's free.
Yeah.
And then you say, okay, but there's another thing.
Yes. Yeah. Because interesting gets you audience, and
Correct.
interesting gets you credibility.
Yeah.
And right, like that's what interesting gets you. But you got to have something actionable on top of that. Now let me ask this question. Did anybody ever abuse the system? Because I could picture a hotel saying, okay, it's only our hotel and one other hotel in the zip code. Let me request the zip code and then I'll know the numbers of my competitor. Like, did they try to do that or
Oh,
how did
yeah.
they get
But
that?
so the confidentiality of the individual contributors' data is our holy grail. Like that cannot be breached ever, ever, ever.
Yes.
So the data that comes to us stays with us and never, never, never leaves our office again, except in aggregate, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So do people try to game the system? Sure. Do we have systems in place to avoid that? Sure. So it's like sort of whack-a-mole,
Yeah.
mouse. We feel very comfortable with the way that people interact with us, and we feel very comfortable with the way that we protect our data. But it's like anything. People are always trying to get around and say, well, what's the occupancy of that one hotel? And I'm just like, look, you're trying to game us. Just call them.
Yeah.
Like a lot of GMs are like really nice,
Yeah.
if you're saying, look, hey, I'm a GM of a competing property, like, how are you doing? Don't tell me the exact number, but sort of give me a sense, what your occupancy is. You shouldn't talk about price because that gets easily into price fixing. But in
Yeah.
terms of, what does your occupancy look like or so? I mean, those
Yeah.
conversations are, I know when I was a consultant with Ernst & Young, we had to write market studies. And the point was to go to a general manager and say, how are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
how's your hotel doing? And on the occupancy side, that's pretty easy. That not easy, but that is people give that out.
Yeah. So the person that was buying the data, right? The person that's buying the actionable data. I imagine it's a hotel that's maybe thinking about building a new location, and they're trying to get a sense for in this zip code or this region,
Yeah.
what can I expect my occupancy will be or my revenue will be if I were to build a hotel in this area. Is that the similar or the common use case, or what's the?
I mean, that is a use case, but those happen what, every 5 years? So that would
Okay,
not be a
yeah.
great business model. So
Okay,
good
okay.
news is
Yeah,
that in the hotel industry, unlike office or retail, our leases last one night. So we can reprice our lease, our room,
yeah,
every night.
yeah,
And so yield management, which came from the airlines who resell the same seat multiple times a day, we
yeah,
took that and say, okay, we can reprice that room every night depending. And the idea is to sell the right room to the right person at the right price. So that's what yield
yeah,
management is in a nutshell. And so
yeah.
that's what our data allows them to do. So, or is part of the system that they look at when they price rooms.
Right. And some of them are going to be looking at this daily then, right? They're going to be looking,
Absolutely.
and it's going to govern decisions that I make tomorrow. What I see today from your data is going to govern how I price my rooms tomorrow.
Yeah, so uh, it's our data, the most use that we get out of our data is people use it weekly.
Hmm.
So the data comes out Tuesday night, and I would venture a guess that I don't want to say every branded hotel in America, but 98% of branded hotels in the United States have a meeting on Wednesday morning between the general manager, the director of sales, and the head of revenue management. They look at this report. That's how much we are in the fabric of the industry. And then they say, what happened last week? How did we do? Why? What's going to happen next week? What do we think we're going to do? Why? So we're not, I mean, people do, we're not big fans
Yeah,
of daily data on a daily
yeah,
basis and say, hey, here's Tuesday. How did you do yesterday? Let's do it by week. I
yeah,
think we all sort of drown in data anyways. Um,
yeah,
I think having one meeting once a week that sort of sets the pricing strategy for the next 728, 360 days that's plenty.
yeah. All right. So that's fascinating. Um, what do you think would have happened if um, your partner, and I can't remember, Randy his name?
Yeah,
Um,
he's
and you said
the
over
founder
is
of,
that what did you say?
the founder of
The
SGR.
founder,
Yeah.
right? So you're the founder, but in those early days, you were his right hand man,
Well,
right?
he had a president, but I came in, I was employee number 40, and as I said, computing power became cheaper, data became more important,
Got
and
it.
these two guys were running the business and they had young families, and they were just like, look, this traveling thing is exhausting. And I'm like, I'll go. I'm young, I'm single, I don't know anything, and they're like, would you like to go to, I'm like, yep. They're like, don't you want to know where? I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna go, and I
Yeah,
started presenting and talking. And I was working closely with the president at the time, Mark, and also with Randy, the founder. Yeah.
got it. So, but Randy's the one that had the idea. I think you
Correct.
said his dining room table or something like that. Like, yeah, he had this idea.
Yeah.
We get 3 data points. We give 3 data points,
Correct.
and the genius is in that third data point. I think even above the first two, right? The
Yeah.
combination.
I think the combination of give to get,
Yep.
right? I mean, you can buy it from us, but it's very expensive versus it's free. Like you give us something, we give you something, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Make it simple.
Yeah.
The three numbers are very easily understood. The little asterisk to this is, and this sort of gets a little weedy, but I get asked all the time, we get asked all the time, hey, can't you do benchmarking in elder care? Can't you do benchmarking for campgrounds? Can't you do benchmarking
Yeah.
for name any piece of real, I mean, anything really. I was talking to slot machine manufacturers.
Yeah.
They're like, can't you do benchmarking for us? And I'm like, sure. First question, real quick. How do you define revenue? And they're like, oh, well, that depends. And I'm like, well, then we can't talk. But unless you figure out what a dollar in revenue is, we can't benchmark, because if we collect your revenue and you're adding these 3 line items and yours, you have these 6 line items, we can't
Yes.
compare it. So the hotel industry, luckily for Randy, has something called, sorry, super nerdy,
This
the
is perfect. This is the level of detail we need. So yes, give it to me. This is
the
great.
uniform systems of accounts for the US lodging industry. And that is almost 100 years old now. It used to be done by a bunch of literally old white guys in New York City, when New York City was sort of the hotel capital of the world. And they got together and said, look, we need to, our owners are beating each other out. Like we need to have standards. Like, what is a dollar of revenue? Let's define that very clearly. And that, we call it USALI, Uniform System of Accounts for the lodging industry, still exists today, still being updated. Actually, the last version just came out like 3 months ago, still gets updated, and so we can then go to the hotels, or the hotels do it themselves, and say a room sold, oh, that goes into this category. So when we say, hey, tell me your room sold, it's the same, be it Marriott, Hilton, Hyatt, Shangri-La,
Yes.
Smith Hotel, whoever, we're
Yes.
all talking about the same thing. And that is critical.
Yes. So that leads me to my question. If Randy hadn't had this idea that turned into this company, what would have happened? Do you think it was just a matter of time somebody was going to, or what do you picture would have
Other
happened to the market?
other industries are doing it where it's sort of like the top, like a consulting shop ends up collecting it from
Yeah.
the biggest players,
Yeah.
and then the 6 big players sort of have this, I don't know if the word cartel is the right word, but like this understanding that they all share the data with this consulting shop, and then that consulting shop publishes it. We say with authority, here's how the United States are doing. We're
Yes.
not saying here's how these top 6
Yes.
parent companies are doing, because we
Yes.
collected also from individual properties, and that's very expensive and very time consuming. But it allows, because it allows us to then say, oh, here is how the US is doing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when a consulting shop, and I've seen them do this, when a consulting shop does something like this, then you always wonder, okay, well, that's just your clientele, right? Like, right? It becomes kind of an amalgamation of their clientele, and then you wonder how applicable that is to the whole market by nature, right?
Correct. So we talk to trade associations, and
Mm-hmm.
they're like, oh, this is so great. We should do this. And I'm like, yeah, you can. Let's just be very clear. The American Hotel and Lodging Association is not doing benchmarking,
Yeah.
because they are a trade association and they're lobbyists. They are not data people. They
Yeah.
get our data and we share it with them and they publish it and they use it, of course. And actually, the very first endorsement of Randy Smith's report was from the trade association. And they said,
Yes.
look, we're never going to do this.
Yes.
This guy is doing it. Let him do it. We support him. You know,
Right.
a lot of trade associations are like, wow, but $500 million, man, that's amazing. We can create value for our members. I'm like, yeah, but you're not data people, you're lobbyists. This is not, you should endorse a third party to do this for you,
Yeah.
but it's not what trade associations, should be doing. Some are trying.
Yeah. And certainly they have the ability to draw the audience, right? Like
Correct.
they are a
Absolutely.
nexus of the
Yeah,
audience.
absolutely.
But the problem becomes it's a data problem. And you and I both know data problems are sticky and they're complex. And even the 3 data points you're talking about, I cannot imagine the residual complexity that happens even beneath those 3 data points.
Great, yeah. And then, the International Spa Association comes and says, can we track massage chairs? Can we track mani-pedi stations and all this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, that's really complicated. We can, but going to take you a lot of time and effort and money. So we're very fortunate that the 3 numbers are A, well defined, and B, readily accessible.
Yeah, and your timing was good, right? So as far as like this being totally applicable to a publisher, a media publisher who has the audience, like just like the trade association, the media publisher has the audience, right? They've got some kind of a niche audience, whether that's a consumer audience, whether that's a B2B audience. They've got some kind of a niche audience that they're the nexus of that audience. It creates an opportunity for something to exist potentially.
Hmm.
But we cannot underestimate the cost and the difficulty, because really the startup problem for you was, okay, well, how do we incentivize all of these, hotel chains to participate? That's the first problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is the
Like,
first fax machine problem, right? Like the
yeah,
first fax machine is not useful.
yeah,
In our instance, you need four. You need four
yeah,
entities that participate, so we can then say, here's the average, so that nobody can triangulate and say, wow, I think your numbers are XYZ.
yeah,
That was the problem. What was very helpful at the time, that a lot of people realized that data was very powerful, and
yeah,
they were willing to let go of it. And so actually one of the major hotel brands at the time took Randy Smith by the hand, and so to speak, and took him to their competitor and
yeah,
said, hey, we're working with this guy. You should be working with this guy,
yeah.
and that sort of opened doors.
Ah, that's huge. And so up front, you had advocates. It really, you had some, like, if that conversation hadn't happened in the beginning, you're probably at least a couple more years out,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And there were still some companies just were very, very hesitant. They're like, this is my firstborn child. I'm not going to give you my data. Actually, you can have my firstborn child. You can't, like this is like proprietary hotel data is something that is very near and dear to the owner's heart. They're like, oh, we don't necessarily want to share it. So having the brand say, well, if you sign up with us, by the way, subchapter L on paragraph 17 says we will share your data with STR. And people were like, okay, well, if I sign a franchise agreement with Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, being part of the STR family is just part of it.
Yeah, yeah, but you had to get there, and the getting there is the hard part. And I can imagine proprietary data, like just a basic example of what happens with some of my clients. Some of my clients are business journals, and
Mhm.
they do this product called the Book of Lists. Are you familiar with the Book of Lists?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay,
Yep. Used to use it
and
all the time. Yeah.
and so companies are giving them their proprietary data. Private companies, right, are going to tell them their revenue, their number of employees, and maybe some other sensitive information. And that's the difficulty, right? They can be they only ever do it because they trust the brand.
Yeah.
The brand equity is the reason that they do it. But even then, there's still people that have to be convinced and persuaded as to why. And the reason for Book of Lists is, well, the Book of Lists is meant to be an accurate depiction of the big players in the market. Do you really want to be missing
Right.
from the yearbook of business? And
Gives you a benchmarking, right? Gives
yeah,
you, oh, we're number 6. What do the other 5 do?
yeah,
Why are we number 6?
yeah. But it seems to me there's something there for them potentially on that, because it's simple, but not universally accessible, right? Revenue. That's the big one. Number of employees, a little easier to deduce, but still, you know, not comprehensive. And so that's just one use. There are, I think everybody has their pockets of examples. What about residential real estate? Do you see there being an application in residential real estate, of this metric?
Yeah, I mean, so disclosure, CoStar owns homes.com.
Yeah,
Well, we're going 300 miles an hour, trying to
yeah,
make that the platform for people to buy and sell homes. We own apartments.com already, where
yeah,
that has happened, on the apartment side, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I think the idea to say, what is the average price, or what is the average amenity level or so for a certain, this is probably not a competitive set, but more like a
yeah,
rating set, around your house. I think, yeah, I mean, those ideas certainly, make a lot of sense.
yeah, yeah. All right. So as we close up, I want to say this is inspiring, and it's also challenging, because I'm going to be taking this and thinking, okay, what applies to
Mhm.
business journal audience? What applies to city regional magazine audience? What applies to a newspaper audience, right? Like, and I do think part of the equation, just to review for myself, part of the equation is audience, right? And that you were able to draw audience, and you did the difficult job of drawing audience, being a third party
Mhm.
who is not a consultant within the industry, and not even one of the companies within the industry, but a third party doing impartial research on behalf of.
Impartial, critical word.
Right? Because a consultant, you're not going to think impartial.
We sell our data to all the consultants in the world.
Yeah.
We are not telling you what to do with the data. We are not.
Yes.
We don't want to step on those toes. There's a line there. We're saying
Yeah.
occupancy was 60%. Is that good or bad? You go hire somebody to tell you if that's good or bad.
Yeah. Right. So there's impartiality was one of the things. There was the idea of give to get, which was the incentive. The incentive for people to part. One of the incentives was by giving, I will get something. I might not get everything that I want, but I will get something valuable. Right.
Correct.
So,
Well, that's that next step then. You're going to now roll into interesting versus actionable.
yeah, uniformity, you said,
Yeah.
is another thing. It has to be something that has an agreed upon standard amongst all participants in order to be valuable. Well, not valuable, but in order to be accurate.
Yeah, in order valuable in the sense that otherwise I can't compare myself to it, right? Because if you're saying my revenues are defined this way and I'm saying, no, revenue should be defined this way, then comparing revenue numbers doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah. And then the last thing I have is actionable. So the whole model doesn't work if there's not an actionable upsell
Correct.
at the end of the funnel, which is you got we gave you a lot of value for free. That was very interesting. But it's got to be something actionable that a company can act on in some way that either helps them increase revenue, stay competitive,
Yeah,
cut costs.
whatever it may be. Like the sort of bumper sticker is you make money, we make money,
Yeah,
right? That's the that level, of actionability.
yeah. All right. So as we wind up, any advice? Your route into media, your company's route into media was a little bit of a backwards route. Not backwards, but backwards compared to what's normally done.
Oh
Normally,
no,
a publisher starts
totally.
an audience, starts a newsletter, has a print publication, and then maybe develops some products that they can upsell people down the road. You had a product, which
Yeah,
was data, and then somebody said, "Oh, you should have a newsletter. Why don't you have a newsletter?" And so
right.
then you create the newsletter, which builds to the audience.
Yeah,
You should have a conference. Then you create the conference, and then you end up creating this conduit that brings in leads and creates the notoriety that you need,
yeah,
and to be selling all the time, selling this in your sleep now because the
yeah.
data is. I think the way you put it was entrenched. I don't know. You said something. It
We're in
became.
the fabric,
Yeah,
of the industry. Yeah.
yeah. But that's a valid journey. The journey you took was obviously a valid journey because fast forward to the end of the story,
Yeah.
the company sold for, did you say $500 million? Half a
Yeah,
billion?
$450 million to Randy Smith. He didn't have any partners. He didn't believe in
Yeah,
partners, and so it was him and his late wife. They started it, and after she passed, he was like, "All right, what do I do now?" And then he was ready to step away, and CoStar stepped in.
right.
But almost $500 million. Yeah.
So that's the paycheck that happened at the end of this experiment, right? So I think you do have the authority to speak. I mean, as a person who was a part of creating the value that 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 turned into that paycheck.
Yeah.
What advice do you have for media publishers who I've described to you, like the audience of this particular podcast and newsletter? What would you say as they head into this new age that we're heading into?
I mean, this. I don't want to repeat, but so unfortunately, I only have four things to say, and
Yeah,
you mentioned them all. But I
yeah,
think this idea of what do you have that hooks people, and then what's the next thing that they're willing to pay for? I think that differentiation, clearly articulating that to yourself and to your audience. What are you willing to give away for free? Because not everything is actionable. Some things are merely interesting, and then you're like, well, then have it. Like it's that then just your name is on it, and you push it out there.
yeah,
Which is part of it is why when I speak about the state of the U.S. hotel industry, there's
yeah,
very little you can do with it. It's good background, but you're not going to change your pricing of your Hampton Inn on Highway 65 next Tuesday because of Jan said,
Yeah.
that whatever group demand is up,
Yeah. Yes.
So that being able to say, okay, people will find this interesting. Let's push this. And then what's the next level? Where will people then find way to make more money in our audience? And then how can we monetize that?
Right. Which I love because it forces you to put yourself in the shoes of your customer.
Absolutely critical. Yeah.
Right. And so that there's a principle beneath the principle you just said. It's like, how much time am I spending in the shoes of my customer
Yeah.
and thinking about what I can do to help them make more money or make better decisions.
Yeah.
And if I come up with it, that's the thing I'm selling them. Right. And then everything else is gathering audience, leveraging audience,
Right.
informing and delighting an audience. Great, do that till the cows come home, but you got to have that final tier, which is
Absolutely.
yeah. This was a great conversation, Jan. I just appreciate you got such a generous way about you, in terms of just willingness to help other people and share your story and you
Yeah.
know
I love talking about this story that Randy Smith built at his kitchen table with his wife is just it's the American dream truly. You
yeah
know, from the
yeah
kitchen table to almost $500 million, and it's just an awesome story. And I love talking about hotel data.
yeah.
And so this sort of thanks for having me. I appreciate being able to share this.
There was one last thing I want to ask you about travel. You obviously do you get to travel a lot at this point?
So I used to travel all the time. And now, because I'm a little bit more senior, I
Yeah,
can sort of pick and choose. So if somebody says, "Hey, can you come to," like, I'm based in Nashville, which is what the background is, can you come for half an hour for lunch to the West Coast? I'm like, I mean, that I used to do that, and I'm
yeah.
not doing that anymore.
You don't
Now,
do that anyway.
weeks ago, when they said, "Can you come to Spain for half an hour?" I'm like, yeah, I can.
Yeah,
We have a global team. We have whatever 50 people in Singapore and now 60 people in London, and we have people everywhere. So it's like I can just sort of delegate. There are some trips that I like to go on just because I like the group, because we have a long-standing relationship, or honestly because I'm a hotel guy. Sometimes when they say, "Hey, this group is meeting," I'm like, "Yeah, okay," and they're like, "But we're meeting in this location in this hotel." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
yeah.
I want to go to that. So I've definitely picked trips based on where they were meeting, just because I'm a hotel guy. Like, I like hotels. So
Man, and so it did work out for you, man. Like that little, I'm picturing that
really
little
did.
kid,
Yeah.
and you're looking at the Love Boat, and you're like, they get to go to exotic locations. I want to do that. You found your way to doing that.
Yeah.
Dude, congratulations, man. That's why you're smiling so big. Like, yeah, you've gotten to do that and something that you're good at. And so, man, congratulations to you on
I'm
that.
very fortunate. I'm very fortunate. Thank you.
That love for travel, right? That was early, right? That was the beginning of this whole dream.
That's it. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Still doing
Yeah,
it today.
yeah. All right. Well, this was so fun, man. Thank you. You're delightful, a delightful human being. I
Thank you
appreciate you.
so much for having me. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right. Take care.